What percentage of Uber and Lyft riders actually tip? I did an analysis. Let's discuss. A couple of months ago, I made a video on a tip drought that I had on Lyft. I went 46 straight trips without receiving an in-app tip on Lyft, but I thought it would be interesting to see what the following month looked like. That tip drought happened in July, and I decided to look at my tips in August. And really quickly, I drive in the Minneapolis and St. Paul market. I drive on Mondays and Tuesdays. I drive all day, and this is my tipping experience under those factors. I decided to choose my last 100 rides of the month of August, my last 50 on Uber, my last 50 on Lyft, and of those 100 total rides in August, 34 riders tipped, and tips accounted for 9% of my total earnings. Now, as far as airport rides, 15 of those 100 rides were airport rides, and of those 15 rides, 73% of riders tipped, and tips accounted for 18% of my total airport ride earnings. Now, if we break it down by company, 13 of my 50 Lyft riders left a tip, that's 26%. My tips on Lyft accounted for 6% of my total earnings. As far as airport rides, I only gave 4 airport rides out of the 50 rides on Lyft, but 3 of those 4 airport riders tipped. And tips on my airport rides on Lyft accounted for 16% of total airport ride earnings. As far as Uber, 21 of my 50 riders tipped, that's 42%. Tips accounted for 12% of my total earnings. On airport rides, 8 of 11 riders tipped, that's 73%, and my airport tips accounted for 18% of my total airport earnings. So 26% of riders tipped on Lyft, 42% on Uber. Overall, 75% of airport riders tipped me. So one of the main things that I take away from me personally is that airport rides are a major factor in the amount of tips that I'm going to receive throughout a month. Now, that 26% on Lyft and 42% on Uber, how does that compare to some other analysis that I've done, also compared to some other analysis done by Gridwise? That 42% of riders tipping on Uber had to be one of my better months, but 11 of the 50 rides that I did give were airport rides, and tips are a lot more prevalent on those airport rides. But last year I did a similar comparison comparing my tips on Lyft versus my tips on Uber. On Uber, 29% of riders tipped, and on Lyft, 24% of riders tipped. So that 24% versus my 26% in August is very similar on Lyft. Also, on that tip drought video that I did on Lyft back in July, I did an analysis of my tips throughout the entire year up until July, and up until that point, 21% of Lyft riders were tipping and 27% of Uber riders were tipping. And last year, Business Insider published an article with some data that they got from Gridwise. In an analysis of over 500,000 drivers, they found that roughly 28% of Uber and Lyft trips get tips. But overall, with all the analysis that I've done, plus that Gridwise data, I'd say that most drivers, the average driver, should expect a tip on 1 of 4 rides, 25%. And this also depends on the driver. Some drivers, in my opinion, provide terrible service. They shouldn't be on the platforms, and they probably don't receive tips very often. Now, some other drivers are fantastic. They go above and beyond, and they're probably getting a lot more tips because of the higher service level that they provide. For me personally, I keep it pretty simple. I always want to act professionally. I keep a clean environment for my riders. I also try to read my riders to see if they want to engage in conversation or just be left alone. And a couple of things that I do have that may aid in tipping is I have a USB fan, and I also have a Play Octopus advertising tablet. And as far as that USB fan in my vehicle, I don't have vents in my back seat, so I want to recirculate the air for my riders, and I have had a lot of riders comment about that fan, saying they do appreciate it. I think they might view this as me going above and beyond. And I've also had a lot of riders comment about my Play Octopus tablet and interact with it. And the Play Octopus tablet is completely passive income, and just over a year driving part-time for Uber and Lyft, I've earned $225. But yeah, overall, I had pretty good tipping data in the month of August, especially on Uber and especially on those airport rides, getting tipped on 75% of all airport rides. Also tipping better in general on Uber, but overall for both platforms, riders tip about 25% of the time. But what about all of you? Have you done an analysis like this? Have you looked at a month and seen what your tips have looked like? And also, what markets do you drive in? And how is tipping at the airport in your market? If you've yet to download the Solo app to help you manage your rideshare business and earn more, our referral link is in the description. We also have a free newsletter, and the link to sign up for that is in the description as well. If you've yet to watch my previous video on rides, unfortunately leaving the state of Minnesota, be sure to check that one out. Thanks again for watching, and drive safe.